Awesome. If you're listening to this, welcome back to episode 6 of The Search Economy. Super excited to have a guest on today, Amanda Liew Hill. She is the Director of Ecommerce and Lifecycle at First Day. Amanda and I have been working together for, I think, over a year now, and it's been a blast. So as we started to put together the podcast, you were high on my list to jump on with me. So excited for you to be here. Feel free to give a quick intro for everybody listening, and we will jump right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So great to be on this. Very exciting. And so I'm the director of ecom and lifecycle at First Day. And the way that I typically explain First Day is that we are a wellness company that's like fighting hidden health crises, really. And we primarily are doing that through our vitamins and our supplements, really having that rooted in just like next generation science. Here at the company, I mainly focus on the entire customer journey, really, and thinking about LTV primarily. So asking a lot of questions around, how can we get customers to actually buy with the conversion rate? How can we get them to subscribe? How can we get them to come back? And how can we get them to buy more and oversee a handful of different channels here?
I love it. It's funny you said kind of all the responsibilities and roles that you tackle. We were just talking about that today with the team. And there's always stuff that you uncover that I think is your sweet spot, right? So as I put down the stuff I'm accountable for, I think there are some things that I'll do and some things that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do that. Of everything you listed, what gets you the most excited to come to work, or like what gets you the most excited about what you're moving the needle on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. It's funny because I think my background actually I entered my current role in like a very unique route, which I think you and I have like chatted about before. I got my career started off in investment banking, which is like where I really got like quantitative
A little
chops.
different than life cycle
Yes,
marketing.
yeah, I know. I always like laugh of, if I had, a decade ago looked back at where my career was headed, I'd be like, wait, really? That's like how it's gone? Could have never guessed. But yeah, coming out of investment banking, made the jump really into like the world of startups. That's kind of like been the larger trend for most of my career trajectory. And through that took like a lot of like business strategy types of roles. And in doing that, started edging more towards D2C, edging more towards e-commerce, and specifically the e-com side of things, and like conversion rate optimization and whatnot. And so I would say through that journey, and because of like where I've come up, like a lot of the conversion rate optimization work that we're doing is super exciting for me in particular, and like love being able to it's honestly just like all of the experiments that we run, being able to like see the immediate impact of the work that we're doing, as opposed to, at a lot of other roles, a lot of other companies, it takes ages to actually be able to witness the work that you're doing and how it manifests and how it impacts the customer. And so that's probably what gets me the most excited.
Love that. Yeah, it's definitely a different, not to overuse the term life cycle, but life cycle of work. You can see the movements of it
Yeah.
a lot quicker. I mean, investment banking to marketing always cracks me up because I went corporate finance to marketing. So, I
Yeah.
mean, similar but different. What are some of those things that you think come from that background that help you in today's role? Because it is an interesting shift, but I definitely think there's some overlap.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, the quantitative side of it, right? Like being able to uh, have gotten my start in heavy financial modeling. I was doing LBOs and all sorts of different things back then. But, there's a lot that still translates over, right, in terms of the quantitative side, and just being able to figure out how to piece together data, how to find connection points between things to be able to actually tell a story. And I feel like so much of that is, blending together like the quantitative and the qualitative, which ultimately at the end of the day is like such a huge aspect of marketing in and of itself.
It is, and I mean, even like managing data and understanding how to read it, I always pulled from that background as well. I broke open a pivot table the other day, and I was like, I remember the days when all I did was do pivot tables, but it is fun to pull on some of that skill set every once in a while and look through marketing from a different lens. Because I think with that background, you get to see a whole different side of the business. You get to see the finance, you get to see how it all fits together, how it all ends up on a P&L. And I always think it's nice to have that view point and kind of that track record as you look for the larger opportunities around marketing and where you're going to put cash, where you're not going to put cash. And yeah, it's an interesting way and definitely an interesting overlap, but one that I've always found.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then of course there's also, the work ethic side of things too, right? Like when you're young and getting slammed by investment banking and Wall Street and whatnot, it teaches you to an extent like what you're capable of and the fact that you can work really hard to apply yourself to something and push forward on just really challenging projects. So
I'm
yeah,
not
there's
sure
that.
if I could pull the 70 and 80s hour
Yeah, definitely
anymore,
not.
but there was like an art of like that was oddly enjoyable because you get a big project and you're like, well, okay,
Yeah,
let's figure out what to do. But
right.
I know a lot of my friends who are still in. I have one that's in iBanking, and it always cracks me up because we'll text over the weekend, and he'll go dark on Saturdays, and he's like, "Sorry, just put pencils down." And I was like,
Oh my gosh,
"I
yeah.
forget." I was like, "I haven't heard the pencils down word in a long time," but I was like, maybe probably the last time I heard that was taking a standardized test in like middle school was probably
Right.
yeah, outside of that. But no, I love it. So I mean, as you think of first day, obviously we've worked together as well, and even coming from the finance side of things, I think one thing that we're big on, hence the title of the podcast, the search economy, is people are online, but they're not just online. Well, some of them are online just for fun. I think you have your TikToks, your Instagrams. You can definitely attribute revenue there, but a lot of times people are on there for engagement, which is fine. And I think what we quickly found, especially me coming out of that last role, is search in general, Google in general, and even others. We were talking about Bing the other day, play a really interesting role as people are always going to ask questions. But I think in the past, customers weren't always on offense as much as they are today. I know you and I have talked about that. They have an issue, they're not waiting to solve it. I'm not sure if they always waited to solve it, but they're certainly going out in the offense. They're looking, they're searching, they're trying to gather all the information about what they could have. Whether it's a love of self education, whether it is just they want to control that process, I think it changes. But yeah, I'd be curious how you're seeing that with First Day. I know some of the work we do together lays into that, but how are people searching for you? Or how do you see people try and lead a little bit of that self education to learn more about the multivitamins you sell, or really maybe the importance of what you're doing as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a big part of like you touched upon it. A big part of how we differentiate ourselves is really in like our the products that we are actually creating, right? And like the multivitamins and supplements that we're creating, and using higher quality ingredients that are actually like clinically backed and have studies behind them. And so much of that is requires like that education component, right? And that's a a double-edged sword to an extent, right? Like being able to have the space online, whether it's through articles or our D2C website, to be able to educate customers about that, or even in our paid funnels and things like that. But then at the same time, sometimes customers are just looking to make a quick decision too. And so I think it's interesting because as I think about search in general and like the role that customers are playing as they're searching for things, like I think of it even beyond SEO, right? Like I think a lot of it about it like impacting a variety of different implications, right? So there's brand reputation, there's third party review sites, there's press, like all of these things are part of what people come across. There's even like Reddit forums, and that's a huge player now in terms of like what's coming up on search results. And so needing to think through all of those different options, even organic social to an extent, right? Like TikTok, I think is becoming a bigger and bigger player in terms of how people are searching to find solutions for things, and trying to think through all of those arenas beyond even just the traditional world of SEO, of how are we coming across to consumers. And there's the difference between being able to target customers who are looking for those keywords of best multivitamins, best vitamins for women, etc. But then there's also certain areas that we're trying to uh, garner more conversation in, right? So we talk a lot in many of our ads about the hidden hunger crisis that exists for a lot of kids, where there's a nutrient deficiency that parents aren't necessarily even like aware of, right? And so we actually see this interesting connection point where people maybe are becoming familiar with that term through our paid ads, but then they're going online later on to actually search and learn more and educate themselves about that. And it's like, okay, great. How can we actually meet people at that part of the journey as well? So that we're really creating a unified, uh, you know, through point for them, and being able to meet them at all points of the user journey. Yeah, and then hopefully having that present on our website as well.
I Yeah, I love that because it's more than just the search and find. I think a lot of times you forget about everything that happens before and everything that happens after as well. And it's like there are so many different things that can lead somebody to search for you. Um, and I think the stuff that you hinted in there is like what are people becoming familiar with and what are they going to search? It's not always going to be. Maybe a decade ago it was just multivitamins. It's all you drank for because you could come up first and it was easy. But it's definitely gotten more people search for things, but you can get so much closer and more intricate with your customer to understand what they're actually searching before they might want to buy, and find all those little questions and curiosities that they're bringing to Google. But also, uh, and you mentioned TikTok as well. I think our role even expands over the course of time with a lot of our clients, not just Google, but understanding how do people search, how do your customers search, and how can we capture that? Because there's a lot of different things that they can search for. There's a TikTok, there's an Instagram, but also being in Google as well, which I think layers into that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think going off of that, there's also tackling customers who maybe they're searching for something and don't realize that there's a better solution out there. And so, we recently launched our line of tribiotics like earlier this year, and that's a 3-in-1 combo, right? Of the our prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics, like all in one. And so many customers don't even realize that that is an option, right? Like it's truly like the one of the first that exists out there on the market. And so being able to also meet customers where that when they're searching for probiotics or trying to understand about the difference between prebiotics and probiotics, and there's all these confusing terms, and what do all these biotics even mean, and being able to hit customers at that point and introduce them to a new concept that they weren't even aware of.
I want to dive into that a bit more because you and I have chatted on it quite a bit.
Yeah.
How do you think of, I'll put it differently. How have you considered what are people searching for when this is a new product? Maybe even a new name. Like we're trying to create something, but we still need to capture some of that demand in the market as well. Like, how did you all go about thinking through that or even bringing that to market?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so in terms of the product itself, our product team is amazing and really trying to understand, like a prebiotic. I feel like I'm gonna botch this to an extent, but a prebiotic is ultimately like the most simplified version of it's going to be like the food that ultimately like also helps feed the probiotic, and then the postbiotic is like the byproduct of the probiotic itself. So by being able to create by being able to put all three of those into one together, you're really enhancing like the ability for that product to work compared to if you only had one, right? Only had a probiotic, or only had a prebiotic even. And so um, yeah, that is how we approached it, largely from a product perspective. But then I would say from a marketing perspective, we definitely started off with primarily focusing on our existing customers. One of the benefits of our product as well, and a big ethos of how we even think about First Day and the products that we're creating, is like we focus a lot on bioavailability and efficacy of the product itself. And so by being able to improve your gut health, you actually have the ability to also increase your absorption of the multivitamins. And so our philosophy is that you should absolutely be able to take multiple of our products at the same time, and have it actually like increase each other's efficiencies, right? Like you're essentially able to increase the ability of your stomach to then digest and absorb everything that you eat, as well as our multivitamins. And so that's just a larger product philosophy that we have in whole as a whole, that we want all of our products to be able to be taken and to never have a risk also of over supplementation. Like that's a big concern of ours. The industry for supplements and vitamins is not very regulated. There's a lot of like snake oil salesmen out there, and a lot of a bad reputation, like for many companies that exist in this industry. And over supplementation is one of them that like it gets me honestly so up in arms and like so fired up because it can be extremely dangerous, like for consumers, especially for kids, who are being given like 300% of a percentage daily value that is, just not something that they need, not going to be good for their bodies. And this is a total tangent, but my mom actually had a situation where I think it might have been her like B12 levels or something like that. Were actually extremely, extremely high, and it was causing like leg numbness and issues with her health. And it came back in the results that it was too high, and it was pretty much related to just generic like vitamin that she just like went to Costco. She didn't even like know the brand of it. But that is largely how customers often are approaching like the vitamin sphere. Like they're just like, all right, I'll buy this off of the shelf. And it's very commodified. There's not much research behind things, and there's a lot of junk and bad science going or no science going into how the formula is made. So yeah, that's a place that we're really trying to draw a line in the sand of like we're not going to stand for this, and we're going to formulate our products differently, and you can take every single one of our products and not risk overdosing or over supplementing yourself here. So that's the product side of things. And then I guess switching over to like the marketing side of things, yeah, we very much focused on our existing subscribers and being able to show them, hey, you can take this product in addition to like the one that you're already taking. And we saw an amazing success rate with that. Our kids multivitamin is like our hero product, and so we first launched with like our kids belly biotic, which is the tribiotic. And yeah, we had a production run that was set, I think, to our goal essentially was like, all right, let's try to sell out within like a quarter or something like that. And we ended up selling out within a month's time frame, which is unbelievable. So that was super exciting. And yeah, in terms of how we're even trying to now do more of the like top of funnel to like true new customer marketing, I think it's being able to then hit upon the unique aspect and unique selling point that it has as a three-in-one type product that is really so novel compared to a lot of the other products that are out there.
I love it. So you went two sides of it, which I really like because it gives you a good follow up as well. But I mean, like the intricacies of the product, I think are awesome because uh, one thing I always talk to people about search is it isn't just someone isn't just searching for you, looking for you, and then they're going to buy. It doesn't always happen like that anymore. They want to search, but then they almost want to be, and I wouldn't say almost, they want to be pitched by your site, by pitched by whoever, right? Being in the top 3, 5, 10 on Google gives you a chance to be, increase your at bats, but it doesn't mean you always get a hit. And I think it's really interesting that, there are others that probably have at bats, but customers are looking for, especially customers of First Day, are looking for a story, something more holistic, not just an off the shelf option. And I think that's a really unique thing about search is it's going to give you an opportunity or an at bat to tell your story. Doesn't mean it's going to render, or I guess not everybody's going to respond the same, and that's fine. Not everybody is everyone's customer. But I liked you leaning into that because I think a lot of people forget showing up is part one, telling your story is part two, and having a good story that really like gets in front of people and resonates. It helps because when people search for that, they're like, "I have been looking for this. This is exactly what I want," and like it's like a match made in heaven, right? So, but on the other side, you lean into the marketing, and I think that's where my question falls. You had a lot of left brain focused intricate product things, and then you followed it right up with the right brain creative of, okay, how do I tell that story in such a way that gets people in front of it? You all, especially knowing other supplement companies, have leaned into knowing everything about what you're producing and what you're selling, which I think is the right way to do it. But not every customer wants to know every little bit of science that goes into it. Like, how do you draw that line? How do you find that line? But how do you marry the complexity of what you do in a good way on the product side with some of the creativity that needs to be brought into the marketing?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I feel like The answer to everything is experimentation.
Yep.
and it's interesting that you bring up like left brain and right brain, because I feel like experimentation is the perfect blend of that, right? Like it's being able to marry your I actually don't always know which left brain and right brain, like what that even corresponds to, but like,
I always say left is logical, and I could be wrong. If somebody calls me out, that's fine. But I think I always do left is logical, the two L's. Right, it's the only other option. I don't have a great naming convention for that one.
yeah, I mean, I guess I think of it like quantitative and qualitative. That works too. But yeah, it's like with an experiment of any sort, right? Like using like I also oversee our like email and SMS. Like I've got like an email and SMS team that's amazing, that does a ton of experiments on our flows and our campaigns constantly. And like if you're looking at, like let's say check out abandonment flow or something like that, right? Like you've got to have a hypothesis of some sort that's informed by like, all right, where is this customer in their user journey? Like what have they already been told at this point in time? Why have they potentially abandoned cart? And then like what are we going to have the hypothesis on, right? Then you actually have the results themselves, and they like have to be able to analyze from like a quantitative perspective, like how those results are actually panning out. And there are so many times that we will run an experiment and we're like shocked by the results, because we're like, every single person on this team would have placed money on the fact that that experiment should have won, and the customers are like, no, no, like we're not going for that. That doesn't resonate with us. But yeah, it's like you've got the results on the quantitative side, but then I think the thing that we often are thinking about is truly like how can you extract learnings from it, and how can you analyze like whether or not it's actually won or lost, right? And be able to understand how are we actually going to apply that learning to subsequent experiments, to other parts of the business even, to be able to push all of that forward. And yeah, I think like back in the day, I probably approached experimentation like a little bit looser. I was like, all right, like, I'm going to tweak this and tweak that and make this copy change and change this image out. And the reality is it's like when you're super loose with how you approach experimentation, you're also going to have like learnings that aren't very substantial or aren't really rooted in the data even, and be able to prove things out. And so we focus a lot on like, all right, how can we truly isolate the variables here? So if it is being able to overcome a specific customer objection, like how can we make sure that like from an executional standpoint, like all we are changing is that one singular
Variable.
objection and that
Yeah.
one singular variable. Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. That's another crossover from anything finance and iBanking tonight. Because you started talking, I was like, I thought of statistically significant and R squared tests, and I was like, wow, again, a lot of overlap. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fun as well because there is the quant and the qualitative side, the understanding of it might look good on paper, but how do customers respond to this is also another funny question. Of I've been time and time again of like, yeah, that's not going to work, and it goes great. It's like weird. I wouldn't expect that, but I do think that's the fun of having numbers that you can rely on that kind of grade success for you and test the creative. But I'm like you, if I'm going to make a change, I want it to be a wholesale change on one variable, but honestly, only test the one variable. You don't want to change four, five, six, seven things and really have no idea what impacts it. Might be fun, but not always the best way to scale either.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, best case scenario, it wins. And you're like, okay, great. Our hypothesis worked, but we don't know exactly why it won. And then worst case scenario, it loses. And you're like, we genuinely have no idea. We
Yeah,
have
you,
no
you have
idea. How
bad data, and you make a wrong decision, and then it's just cyclical at that point. But
yeah.
yeah, those are always fun. Running it, you step back and you're like, well, I think I know why this did well or didn't go well. But yeah, those are always interesting situations to be in.
Yeah.
But I love it. I'll pivot a little bit, but as we look to close here, but even as you look forward for first day, what else is on the horizon for you all? Whether the things you can talk about, but yeah, I'm curious what's on the horizon, whether from product or marketing. What has you excited about what you guys are facing in the future?
Yeah, I think my mind in particular has been really focused on how can we build customer loyalty. Obviously I own the retention side of it, but even going beyond like, all right, how can we get subscribers to keep coming back to us month after month? Like truly taking a step back and how can we how can we develop customers who are true fans, truly willing to celebrate us, advocate for us, talk about us, and how can we drive that? And so that's especially important as we recently launched on Amazon. We're considering like how do we want to continue becoming an omni-channel company, whatever that looks like in the future. And in the midst of all of that, like how can we make sure that D2C is an extremely strong player and has like a unique proposition as like a channel even. And so that's a lot of where my mind is going, and being able to help customers buy even more into like the story of who we are, what we're doing, and why we are actually different compared to a lot of the other brands that exist out there.
I dig it. As you think about leaning into it, obviously, I think additional SKUs, additional products help. But what are some of those more soft side of things that you found that have worked really well to keep people coming back?
I would say a big part of it is the customer experience. And so, like customer support in particular. Yeah, you would be honestly shocked at the things that our customers are willing to write into us and really just sharing their stories with us. We have customers that are writing in like all the time that are talking about how our product has made a dramatic difference in their health, in their life. And it's like such a beautiful story. And there have been a handful of opportunities where we've been able to reach out in like a really unique way, whether it's like sending a video from our CEO and founder Alice, like responding to their email, which is something that most customers would be like shocked to receive, or even sending them a surprise gift of some sort, and really being able to uh, acknowledge like, hey, like we really thank you for sharing this part of your story with us, and we're not this mega corporation that's got 800 million levels, but we're real people who are reading the things that get sent into us, and just being a bigger part of the customer journey and the customer story.
Love that. It's I often remind our team as well that for us, we manage plenty of clients across the board, different industries, things like that. One person might be on 3 or 4 accounts at a time, but for that account, we are their only agency. And I think when you lean into surprise and delight, but also a reminder that how can we create that feeling that we're on your team as much as we can be, right? As much as the expectation allows, but the closer you get, the more that you invite them into your story as well, as I think is really cool. You just often see, and it's a cliched saying, but you see companies treat their customers as number. It's order 14572, and I get some of that. Your goal is growth. Some of that you might lose, but I've always found the companies end up sticking around longer are the ones that get as close as they can to the customer and actually have that relationship. There's no way you'll be able to talk to every customer. That's okay, but I think it's talking to the ones that you can, getting the insights that you can, and letting that drive the business as well. Um, I'm a big person on servant leadership, but I think businesses are there to serve the customers and not the other way around. The more that you can build something that just further serves your customer base and the people like them, the better off the business actually becomes, ironically. So, um, yeah, love that. I'll finish, or at least give you kind of an open-ended one. We talked a bit about the search economy. Your customers are on offense. I know you think about that a lot with your role now. What other advice would you give for people, equal titles, similar roles at other companies that are thinking about not just Google, but I would say search as a whole, and really how to meet their customers where they're at whatever point in the journey they are?
Yeah. um, I would say take take a step back and truly try to understand who your customer is and where are they in their journey, how are they making the decisions that they're making, and um, also what are the additional things that are taking their attention away from trying to solve a problem specifically, right? Like I think at first day, one of the reasons that we even exist is because it's really hard to be a parent. And it's really hard to give your kid nutritious food that is well balanced, and like you've got a picky eater that's like fighting you constantly, right? And that's a lot of how we're trying to be able to meet parents where they're at, to provide a product that helps fill the gaps, especially with our multivitamins in particular. But it's like being able to understand who the customer is, what are they up against, what are they fighting, what are like the biggest burdens that they have. And then so much of that also is like attention span, right? Like our parents have to make really quick decisions, right? And trying to make things as easy as possible for them, whatever part of the journey that they're coming into. And then I think taking a bigger view as well, and to not necessarily only thinking about like traditional channels, but how are customers bouncing, like across different channels? How are they? What are they going to see on organic social versus email and SMS versus paid, versus SEO, and being able to connect all of those points as much as possible, so that you're telling a congruent story to the customer again and again, and helping them move down that funnel itself.
I love it, and it really is making sure your congruent story, pops up everywhere. But making sure, I think half the battle is just being visible. A lot of our customers and clients will hear, they will hear from their customers, or I guess at that point prospects, of, well, I just didn't know you existed. Like if I knew, my decisions would be different, but I didn't know you were there. And I think again, that's half the battle, of just getting in front of somebody to have your app, but then telling that story as well and bringing it home. It's definitely two sides of it, but getting in front of people is step one, and understanding how your customer thinks about the product is a big portion of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thanks for jumping on. I appreciate the kind of just the deep dive in search, but also life cycle marketing. Like I said, I always have liked what you did, have done, and it's always fun to connect iBanking and marketing together.
Right.
So, thanks for jumping on. If people want to follow up either with you or First Day, where can they find you?
Yeah, our website is firstday.com. So that's where you can get access to all of our different vitamins, supplements, our bundles, and everything like that. And then if you want to reach out to me, would love to connect and chat more with other people in the industry. My LinkedIn is also under just Amanda Liew Hill, and that's you can probably find my profile connected to First Day.
Awesome. Thanks again, Amanda.
Awesome. Thanks so much.